I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would ask those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, would you turn it to silent mode so as not to interfere with our electronic communications. I do have one proclamation to present this morning. We'll do so at this time. I'm going to ask County Manager Penny Post Oak Ferguson to join me this morning at the podium. We have a proclamation prepared honoring Public Service Week, recognizing those who serve our communities, whether at the federal level, the state level, or the local level of government, including military, including first responders, firefighters, and I think in the firefighter community, in many areas, there's a service of volunteers. So it's recognizing our employees, our local government employees, all across the board, that we issued this proclamation this morning and thank them, recognize them for their outstanding work that they provide to us every day. So, County Manager, I'll present this to you.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to make comment.
Yes, I will say it's an honor and a privilege to be in public service and work with like-minded, community-focused members such as the board and staff and community members that are here that are interested in what we're doing every day. I will say that we have a podcast that we just loaded to our website that you can hear from various employees why they're in public service. And so if you want to hear directly from our staff, I encourage you to watch the podcast or listen to the podcast. Also, these last few years have been extra hard on those in public service. And so I just want to say a big thank you to the workforce and the community members that work with us and the board. And so I would leave with this final request to anybody that's listening. Please thank a public servant today. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. We do have speakers both virtually and in person this morning. So for those who are speaking, would remind you that there is a 2-minute time limit. And for those who are speaking in person, there is a modem that you can refer to. If speakers go beyond the 2-minute limit, then the chair is required to ask you to conclude your remarks. So with that, let's begin with our first speaker.
Today, virtually, we have Debbie Detmer. Debbie Detmer.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hello, I'm Debbie Detmer, a grandmother of 8 and a retired registered nurse. I want to know what you as our county commissioners are going to do about getting this American Marxism implementation out of this government unit and our schools. The indoctrination through the DEI and the SEL in our schools is grooming our children for pedophilia. They are teaching that a man or a woman does not exist. They are reading books to our kindergartners that they just may not know what they are before they can even read. Then teaching in class through math questions and questionnaires about sexuality, racism, and division via suppressors and the suppressed teachings. The Board of County Commissioners and the schools have sold parents' rights out for the federal money and agenda of these American Marxism teachings. The schools now believe the children are theirs to implement their beliefs to our children and take away our rights as parents to teach Christianity and our values to our children. Parents need to be standing up against this. You, as our county commissioners, should be standing up against this. Parents, you can opt your children out of almost everything going on in the schools, including computers. Request for all written work for your children, and opt out of all questionnaires about race and sexuality. It is time to stand against the public school teachings of American Marxism. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Now we have Cassie Woolworth. Cassie Woolworth.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. First of all, I'd bet Miss Dietmer hasn't been in a classroom for years because Johnson County Board of County Commissioners has nothing to do with the school. We vote for school board members for that. But back to my program. The first time I saw a photo of an anti-vaxxer with a sign that read, "My body, my choice," I was puzzled. I thought perhaps the photo editor had used the wrong image to accompany the story, but then I saw the sign that included a picture of a mask with a red line across it. No, these people weren't protesting a government that has regulated uteruses, a government that was telling women when they could end a pregnancy and that what was going on in their own bodies. They were instead protesting a simple and painless public health measure. They were mad at the fact of wearing masks. For this particular group, government regulation was fine unless it was regulating them, at which point it became a horrible infringement on their constitutional rights. Many of you sit on this board right now. We're at the precipice of the end of Roe and the beginning of a period of Republicans legislating women's bodies. But this comes in steep irony. The same group that wants to make it impossible for you to end your pregnancy is furiously insistent on showing vaccination proof should be illegal. Low vaccination numbers mean more people get sick. Just like less access to birth control leads to more abortions, and less access to legal abortions leads to more women dying. Abortion isn't about abortion, and the pandemic is no longer about public health. For Republicans, it's a case of government regulation for thee, not me. And some of you hypocrites sit on this board. Please, dear God, vote.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Now in person, we have Michael Duffield. Michael Duffield.
Good morning. Name is Mike Duffield, live at 27555 West 207th Street in rural Gardner. When we moved here 32 years ago, our young daughters, When we moved here 32 years ago, our young daughters could safely ride their bikes in front of our house. Today, we can't let our grandson do that because our rural road is being torn up by speeding semis and other heavy equipment, truck traffic coming and going to Edgerton's Logistic Park. Edgerton's city administrator stated they are working with Johnson County and Gardner and others to try and rectify the truck traffic issues created by the Edgerton Logistics Park in our rural Johnson County area. I've spoken with Commissioner Allenbrand and Johnson County Director of Public Works, and they both verified these meetings are happening. None of the meetings are made public, and there is no written agenda or published minutes kept. This makes me concerned if those meetings are in our best interest. I was told by the Johnson County Director that when Edgerton requests help in improving 207th Street for North Point Logistic Park build-out, land currently in litigation for Edgerton's improper annexation, that Johnson County will assist them by securing right-of-way through land purchases or taken from private Johnson County landowners using eminent domain. Some of this land is in rural Johnson County, not Edgerton. I don't believe it is right to use our tax dollars to build roads that will destroy our rural community, just so North Point, a private, non-Kansas company, can make a profit. Let them use I-35 and Homestead Interchange that was built for them. Don't destroy more of our rural roads. Edgerton claims they are good neighbors, yet their actions have proved opposite. Please help us save what we have left of our rural Johnson County community. Deny Edgerton's expansion and destruction eastward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Ben Hobart. Ben Hobart.
Ben Hobart, Westwood Hills. The FDA has announced tentative dates in June for the Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee meetings to review the Moderna EUA request for 6-month to 6-year-olds and a related anticipated Pfizer-BioNTech EUA request for the same group. I will address that data in subsequent meetings of this board. I've come to this board's meetings over the last year with one goal. I desire that Johnson Countyans, both as individual adults and with respect to their children, have all the information necessary to make an informed decision as to whether or not to get the clot shots deceitfully labeled the COVID-19 vaccines. Have all the board members gotten your polio and MMR booster shots? Of course not. Those are sterilizing vaccines. The clot shots are not sterilizing vaccines. Moreover, they have significant potential known and unknown adverse side effects. Any Johnson County desiring complete information before making a clot shot decision should read 2 articles. First, Robert M. Rennebaum, MD, Rennebohm, an open letter to parents and pediatricians regarding COVID vaccination. It is a 60-page letter with an additional 60 pages of cited authorities, including studies. It is an extremely informative letter. A summary of the letter is included in its first 10 pages. Although lengthy, it is worth your time. Second, Geert Vanden Bosch, DVM, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, PhD's article entitled The Immunological Rationale Against COVID-19 Vaccination of Children. His well-reasoned conclusion is that, quote, recommendation of such vaccination is scientifically unsound, and that such vaccination is harmful to individual children, children as a group, and humanity as a whole for the following reasons, which he sets forth. Please read it. It is also important to note, Johnson Countyans, there's a growing body of evidence that the clot shots suppress innate immunity. Educate yourselves, make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Jennifer Levinson. Jennifer Levinson.
Good morning. Jennifer Savner Levinson, a resident of Overland Park. I am the co-chair of the Mental Health Action Team of the Good Faith Network. We are an interfaith group composed of 20 congregations from across Johnson County with the mission of pursuing justice around our community's most pressing problems. On Tuesday, May 3rd, we held our culminating event of the year, the Nehemiah Assembly, which we believe marks a milestone in the history of Johnson County. More than 1,200 people of faith came together to act on the scriptural call to do justice. It was an enormously positive event based on grassroots efforts within our community, and we look forward to continuing in that spirit going forward. We were pleased that Commissioners Allenbrand, Fass, and Hainslick were able to attend. We recognize that the open meetings law prevented a quorum of commissioners from being present that night, so if other members of the commission would like to meet with us, we would be more than happy to meet with you. At the Assembly, we called for the establishment of a mental health crisis center, a short-term residential treatment unit that provides immediate care to individuals experiencing a mental health or substance use disorder crisis. When a community does not have sufficient access, it increases the likelihood that residents in crisis end up languishing in an emergency room or in jail. We heard from each commissioner who was present that night voice her personal support for the development of a plan to open a crisis stabilization center in Johnson County. We understand that the projected cost of such a facility appears in the current CIP budget for 25, and that preliminary planning is already underway. We hope that the timeline will be expedited. We are excited about the goal of having a crisis stabilization in Johnson County, and we look forward to understanding how the planning process will unfold and look forward to being part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Tim Suttle. Tim Suttle.
Morning, Tim Suttle, 11434 South Northwood Circle in Olathe. And I am the pastor of Redemption Church in Olathe and chair of the Ending Homelessness Action Team for the Good Faith Network. On Tuesday, May 3rd, we held our Nehemiah Assembly, and we're pleased to have Commissioners Allenbrand, Fast, and Hanslick to join us there. And with more than 1,200 people in attendance, we called for support for a comprehensive plan to end homelessness in Johnson County and the hiring of a homelessness coordinator, which our research showed are key elements in moving from managing to ending homelessness. Our assembly was preceded by our homelessness summit in April, bringing together more than 50 leaders, law enforcement, and elected officials to explore best practices for ending homelessness. Tuesday night, we heard Commissioners Allenbrand, Fast, and Hanslick commit to continuing the work of their housing subcommittee to create a comprehensive plan to end homelessness. And we look forward to seeing the development of those plans and will continue to advocate for the adoption of housing first principles. We also heard assurance that the new housing coordinator role approved by the board will include responsibility for improving the systems available for those experiencing chronic homelessness. With more than 1,000 students in Johnson County precariously housed or homeless each year, according to McKinney-Vento, with a pit count showing 150 to 180 at least homeless on any given night, and Project 1020 reporting 220 separate individuals using their shelter this year. We know that that number may not seem very high, but we also know that the stakes are high. They're life and death for hundreds of our Johnson County neighbors every single night. And in fact, the night after the 1020 Project shelter closed, there were 2 women sleeping in the window wells of a church across the street because they had no place to go. So we're grateful for the work of the Housing Subcommittee and look forward to collaborating in the planning process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Lisa Huppy. Lisa Huppy.
Good morning. We are not anti-solar and not utility scale solar, not anti-utility scale solar facilities. This is important for you to hear because we get tagged as different than that. Utility scale solar facilities continue to make themselves a nuisance in towns such as Bloomfield, Missouri, who's voted 5-0 to set new rules regulating utility scale solar power projects. In particular, a project being developed by NextEra. These rules define the project in its current form as a nuisance to the town. Standard concerns of the property value and future land development were referenced by townspeople. The ordinance appears to reference an article stating there were 155 fires caused by solar panel systems from 2015 to 2020, with 71 at non-residential systems. The representatives with the new Bloomfield Fire Protection District have stated that their department lacks the facilities to fight a fire within a utility-scale solar facility comprising of hundreds of acres. I think that we would agree that we are unprepared for such an event here as well. Overland Park is a long ways from West Gardner. If a fire started there, we would be done before they got there. Utility-scale solar facilities decrease property values due to safety issues, perceived and real, and undesirable views. Please, a bare minimum of 500 feet from non-participating homeowners' property lines is requested. A minimum of 2-mile buffer from city limits to go with city ordinances and their desires, no more than 1,000 acres. I come here every Thursday and talk to you about this. I hope that we're being heard. Thank you.
Would you, ma'am, would you state for the record your address, please?
Yes, 17535 Edgerton Road, Edgerton, Kansas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Andrew Cross. Andrew Cross.
Andrew Cross, 12005 West 72nd Terrace, Shawnee. Hey, slumlords. How many homes can $117 million buy in Johnson County? That's 468 rental houses at $250,000 each. Democrat and Republican voters are owned. Federal government took out a loan against us for state, county, and city local relief. This county received $117 million and voted to put it in its investment fund. Johnson County housing market is being bought by these institutional buyers with all cash and no inspections for high prices. On the front end, people like me are forced out as owners because this cash infusion, forced inflation, means that we cannot pay property taxes or maintain our properties. On the back end, People can only rent as owners because the institutional buyers pay more than market prices and they charge enough to make profit at the higher rents. So we left with the attitude, renters don't care attitude, and losing the ownership, take care of property. Your loan to their investment, so my loan to this investment profit means that I'm going to be homeless. A solution from India in September 2021, when government laws were going to put farmers out of business, exposing crops to lower-priced international markets. Farmers blockaded so many states and shut down the country. Soon the government backed off. Canada shut down people's accounts for the similar trucker convoy. Canadians pulled their money from banks as cash. Well, let's hear. So has this Johnson County Board pulled this $117 million out of its reserve investments? And where was it spent? On county infrastructure? Where?
Okay, thank you.
Now we have Jennifer Williams. Jennifer Williams.
My name is Jennifer Williams. I live at 21993 Moonlight Road. And today I brought some photos of the truck traffic that we're dealing with. I know a lot of you don't travel that area, so I just wanted to introduce it a little bit better. And also to say most of our residents work during this time period. And so what I'm here with for our community is to ask that you please restrict the truck traffic on these roads that the trucks do not belong on. That would be at a minimum Moonlight Road, Cedar Niles, 207th and 215th. And then that leaves the ones that you guys are afraid about getting political on with 199th and Gardner Road. And on all of these roads, if you look at these photos, these are narrow roads with no shoulders, and it's the only roads that the citizens have to get back and forth to work and to school and to the markets. And so you're not receiving any money from these trucks for driving these roads. The trucks pay with part of their registration, and that money goes toward the federal and the state roads, and that's where the money should be coming from. You shouldn't be calling on the taxpayers to have to pay extra money just to keep up the infrastructure when all the trucks are trying to do is save a couple of miles. From where I live, if I want to get to Lee Summit, I have to drive up 35 to 435 and back down. It might be out of my way, but it's where the roads are and it's faster. I could cut through as a car, but we shouldn't allow the trucks to do this. What you're having is you're losing the place where we have to travel. You're losing the place where a lot of your bikers or bicyclists from all over the county, they come out here and they use these roads until they get faced with this truck traffic. And so we have photos here where we've got trucks across Gardner Road. We have trucks turning around in people's yards. We have an oversized load truck on Moonlight Road right beside a jogger. You have a truck in the ditch on the gravel on 207th Street, and then you have accidents. You had a driver was killed at 207th and Gardner Road just a couple of years ago. And so it's not political to protect your residents and your citizens, because I'm sure a liability lawsuit whenever someone's killed for your negligence is going to be way worse politically for you than just keeping the trucks where they belong. Thank you.
Chairman, that completes our public comments.
All right. That concludes the public comment portion of our agenda. We do have 3 items in regards to notes for the record. I'm going to ask the clerk to read those.
The chairman will be signing the following: 2 full release and 2 partial release of easements for the Consolidated Main Sewer District due to the removal of sanitary sewer line in the vicinity of 140th Terrace and Ballantine Street in the city of Overland Park. An administrative resolution number WD 22-018, enlarging the privately financed sewer district and provide for the assessments of all applicable fees, charges, and levies of the Consolidated Main Sewer District in the vicinity of 15350 Antioch Road, and a development agreement with Damian Brandenburg to allow occupancy of the existing dwelling during construction of a new home on property at 19309 Lowell Avenue. The agreement includes provisions to ensure timely removal of kitchen facilities within the existing dwelling upon completion of the new home, and contingency funds that the county can use to remove the kitchen facilities in the event the owner does not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Today, we have a cold agenda. We were unable to complete agenda review last week, so there is no consent agenda. Would the clerk please read the first item on the action agenda?
Item number 1, consider approving the April 14th, 2022 business session minutes. All commissioners were present.
Are there any corrections or additions? If not, do I hear a motion? Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the minutes of the April 30th, 2026 minutes.
I believe it was April 14th.
April 30th, I was looking, I'm
April
sorry.
14th.
April 14th minutes.
Motion has been made. Do I hear a second to approve the minutes of April 14th? Ms.
second.
Hanslick seconded the motion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. I have 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Item number 2.
Consider approving the appointment of Jeffrey Mendoza, 4th District Representative of the Library Board through April 30th, 2026.
Do I hear a motion? Ms. Hanslick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the appointment of Jeffrey Mendoza as the 4th District Representative of the Library Board through April 30th, 2026.
Allenbrand, second.
Hanslick made the motion. Allenbrand seconded the motion to approve the appointment as noted. Any further questions or comments? Not. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. There are 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Item number 3.
Consider authorizing a contract with Loomis Brothers Equipment Company as a sole source exception to competition for the repair of the jail inmate personal property conveyor in an amount not to exceed $166,500 per County Purchasing Administrative Policy and Procedure number 110.180.A.4.
Mr. Dugan.
Tom Dugan with the Sheriff's Office. This is a request to enter into a contractual agreement with Loomis Brothers to repair our inmate property conveyor at the New Century Detention Center. This is a very large piece of equipment that runs between 2 floors. It's similar to what you might see at the dry cleaners. The property hangs in hanging bags and runs between several floors. The equipment is reaching the end of its useful life. It was installed in 1999. So it's older. The parts are beginning to fail. The motor is failing. The machinery only runs in one direction right now. It's supposed to run in 2 directions, so it's only running in one. So we really do need to replace the equipment. We had a number of options. We expected to have to replace the entire system when we started this process. During the process, we discovered that we could reuse the very large steel frame and just replace all the moving parts in the motors. That will save us quite a bit of money. Probably when all is said and done, this will cost us maybe half as much, and it will last probably another 20 years because the frame itself is a sturdy frame. It's all indoors. There's no wear on it, so we expect just as long a lifespan as the one that we currently have. We are not requesting any funding for this. We're going to use federal funds. We initially expected this to be part of was in our CIP, but because we're moving this project up, we've located some federal funds we're going to use to pay for this, so we're not requesting any funding for it. We just need to enter into the contract.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hanslick, questions?
I'm supportive of this, and I'm glad to make the motion when the time comes.
Ms. O'Hara.
Yes, on the steel portions of this conveyor system, last night we were told that the increase in cost on steel is 300%. So obviously that is saving us a lot of money. On accepting the federal funds, are there any stipulations that's going to undermine our local authority
there's nothing that would impact our authority other than any other federal funds that we're currently already receiving. These are funds that we've received for years and years, and they do not hinder us. And we're actually free to use these funds in many different ways as long as the funds are used to benefit the detention centers.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I too am supportive of this, especially over 20 years. It's a rather de minimis amount. I did have a question, though, Mr. Dugan. In situations like this, do we ever attempt to identify maybe different process approaches to providing these services? I think you've made a compelling argument for this case, but how do you make that kind of assessment?
I did, Commissioner, we spoke briefly yesterday, and you mentioned that you might ask something like this. So I did speak to purchasing yesterday, and their statement was they started out during this process looking at changes in technology. So what's changed since then? Does it make sense to repair this system? Do things still work now like they did 20 years ago? And in this case, technology had not changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on this item? If not, it's back for the commission. A motion is in order. Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to authorize a contract with Loomis Brothers Equipment Company as a sole source exception to competition for the repair of the jail inmate personal property conveyor in an amount not to exceed $166,500 per county purchasing administrative policy and procedure number 110.180.A.4.
Allen Brand, second.
Hanslick made the motion. Allen Brand seconded the motion to authorize the contract with Loomis Brothers as indicated and recommended. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allen Brand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 7 votes in favor. Motion carried. Item number 4.
Resolution number WD 22-012, conduct a public hearing and consider authorizing funds for the Douglas L. Smith Metal Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility plan in an amount not to exceed $1,048,000.
Public hearing is open. Ms. Pekarik.
Thank you, Chairman. Susan Pekarik with Wastewater, and good morning, Commissioners. This request is for the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Facility. It's located at the intersection of College Boulevard and US 69 Highway. We have a map up on your screen. This facility serves the Indian Creek watershed area, and it was initially commissioned in 1982. It's been expanded several times over the years. The last major expansion we did was in 2010 and 2011. We did a liquids and a solids expansion, adding a 4th train, as well as our cogeneration units there. So with the last major upgrade being over 10 years ago, it is time to start planning for the future. So we need to look at future renewal needs, as well as look at what we might need in order to be able to address future water quality requirements over the next 25 years. And so this request is to complete a comprehensive facility plan to look at those near and long-term needs based on asset condition and future effluent requirements. That way we can develop a prioritized implementation plan for this facility. CDM Smith, who is one of Wastewater's term and supply engineering consultants, was selected through an RFP process for work of this type. We also utilized a process that was developed by Johnson County Wastewater staff alongside HDR, who is our program manager. CDM Smith was chosen with the best and most responsive proposal. We did include this project in our capital finance charge model that was presented to the board most recently in May of 21. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Ms. Pekarik? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McCarrick, remind us, is this the site which will also hold the new hazardous waste center, or is that a different one?
No, sir, it's a different property.
Okay.
It is nearby, but not there.
Okay, very good. The question I had was, could you elaborate a little bit on the process you used? You said you worked with HDR to select this vendor. Were others considered? And how did we resolve to select CDM?
So, as part of, looking at our capital plan, this project was one of those identified because it is more complex and a longer-term project. So wastewater staff and HDR developed a process, sort of a mini selection process is what we call it. And in that, we had identified 4 projects at the outset. So when we hired the term and supply engineers under the RFP that I mentioned, we then presented to them those 4 projects so that they could, and we talked through the process. In other words, they could choose to propose on any of those projects. However, if they were selected for any one of those projects, then they would not be eligible to propose on a subsequent project. We did that to try to spread out the work and make it fair. And so they were aware of that at the outset, and they could evaluate which project they felt they were best suited to propose on. And so CDM was the successful firm in this particular project.
Is this the third of the 4?
This is the third of the 4, yes, that's correct.
Ms. O'Hara?
Yes, I just wanted to mention what a wonderful event we had at Tomahawk yesterday, and you were beaming.
Well, I do like wastewater, as you can tell. So. Thank you. I appreciate everyone coming. It was a great event.
Even though it was a rainy day, we had a fabulous turnout. And for me, to have a project come in on time and on budget is really quite miraculous. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to have that same type of success on Nelson, but this was a very joyful celebration yesterday.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's happened before. The courthouse is an issue.
Many times.
And I would not be negative on any future project.
Yeah.
There were some quality people involved in that Tomahawk Creek, and we can talk about it a little later during the committee of the whole. Ms. Fast.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is appropriate time. I mean, this facility is just, you're leading the way in terms of using the biosolids for energy use, electricity. And I guess I'm just asking, will this look at how we can even go further on that in terms of energy repurposing, and could this incorporate land use, renewable energy? I mean, it would be incredible if this facility could be, zero carbon.
Well, I will leave that up to the project team, but I would anticipate we would certainly be looking at things like that. There are a lot of wastewater treatment facilities across the country that have gone net zero. The other thing that we've looked at in the past at this facility, and I would anticipate we'll look at again, would be phosphorus recovery. You've probably heard me mention before, phosphorus is a nutrient that we all need to grow food as well as for ourselves, and it is a finite resource. And so the ability to recover phosphorus from our wastewater treatment facilities is good for not only the environment, but it can also be a cost-effective approach to recovering that nutrient. There are, in areas like on the West Coast, where there are much lower limits for effluent phosphorus, it's actually a moneymaker to recover phosphorus. And so it was not cost-effective when we looked at it previously, but that's been probably 10 years, so I think I would anticipate we would look at that again.
So you will be analyzing all those components. I mean, this briefing sheet doesn't say that. I mean, also,
there's multiple. The main
energy.
Yeah, the main focus of this project will be looking at asset condition and trying to prioritize those major reinvestments as well as nutrients. I just mentioned the phosphorus, but there will be lower limits placed on the facility in the future for nitrogen and phosphorus, and so I would anticipate we'll at least take a look at what's possible in the future.
Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Pekarik, you need to be congratulated, not only echoing on Commissioner O'Hara's comments about you beaming, your leadership skills in working with your teams and bringing those teams together and discussing beforehand. For an example of all the millions of dollars that you saved over at Tomahawk is just to be congratulated. I really believe that Johnson County is going to be considered like a Disney of wastewater. So I really think that we could be on the map with some of the leadership skills that you've brought and the things that you're doing. So congratulations to you and your team.
Can you have some rides?
No rides. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Well, I don't think it's any secret that Johnson County Wastewater is probably the biggest client of Evergy in Johnson County. There's a large amount of electricity that's needed. So your efforts in mitigating some of that benefits all the ratepayers of Johnson County Wastewater. Ms. Hanslick?
Thank you.
Yes, I suppose in a way, following up on the Disney theme, I want to mention two things. One is Ms. Pekarik does a terrific tour of the Middle Basin plant. If you have not done that, she has an amazing way of explaining the wastewater process so that it's very understandable. In fact, I had my Rotary group out there one day. We took a tour. So if you haven't done that, it's really helpful to understand the complexity of the process, but actually also the simplicity of it in some ways too. So really encourage you to do that. Secondly, I think it's really important as we are looking at a $1 million cost to recognize this is not property taxes. Don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that this is coming out of property taxes. So thank you, and thank you for maintaining our services so that we don't have problems like some other communities. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Hara?
Oh, thank you. I just want to make a clarification that this money is coming out of general fund reserves, and property taxes are used in those reserves.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am, that's not right. The Johnson County Wastewater has its own reserve.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the Johnson County wastewater
this is
reserves.
simply-
I read general fund reserves.
No, this does not come out of any property tax or sales tax. It's the Johnson County Wastewater Reserve Account, which is provided by ratepayers, so.
Yes, I was on the wrong line. I read on item 5, general fund. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission? This is a public hearing. And there not being anyone, the public hearing is closed and a motion is appropriate. Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the board adopt resolution number WD 22-012, authorizing funds for the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility plan in an amount not to exceed $1,048,000.
Alan Brand, second.
Motion has been made by Hanslick, seconded by Allenbrand to authorize the funds for the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin plant as recommended. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to echo all the exemplary comments about Ms. Pekarik and her leadership, and yesterday, the Disney World thing, maybe not, but it was a good event, a good facility, a good approach, and I very much appreciate you. And I'm supportive of this effort and the need for this effort, but I do have reservations about the selection process through the term supply contract arrangement. I appreciate that staff is trying to be more inventive and to ensure competition, but I'm not comfortable with this approach and the once selected then removed from further consideration because I think it impacts potential competition and the bottom line, so my vote will reflect those concerns.
All right, any other comments? If not, the motion is before us. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Allenbrand,
Allenbrand, aye.
and Chairman Eilert.
Aye. I have 6 votes in favor, 1 opposed, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 5, resolution number 023-22, consider approving a use of general fund reserves in an amount not to exceed $150,000 to conduct a comprehensive salary and benefit study, authorize the county manager to execute an agreement for the study, and adopting resolution number 023-22, amending Johnson County Human Resources HR Policy 301, compensation.
Mr. Thompson.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Maury Thompson, Deputy County Manager and Interim Human Resources Director. I believe we've had a fair amount of conversation regarding this topic with the board, including at a recent budget retreat, recognizing, as we all do, what's happening with the labor market right now in terms of compensation and in terms of recruiting and retaining employees. As has been proposed, as the clerk just read, we're proposing a comprehensive salary and benefits study to go to the market to tell us what's going on out there so we're better prepared to make decisions for the organization. So again, as the clerk indicated, this motion contains 3 pieces. 1, to authorize the study to proceed. Secondly, to authorize the county manager to execute any necessary documents for such study. And finally, to amend your Human Resources Policy 301, which is titled Compensation. Specifically, and I've included in your agenda materials a marked up version of that policy as well as what we call a clean copy. If you have the marked up copy in front of you, you'll see we're proposing 1 change that would give the county manager the authority to determine the comparator organizations for such studies going forward rather than the Board of County Commissioners. Had 1 question in previous conversations about this. In looking at those comparators, I was asked what were the current considerations for determining those comparators. Those are number of employees, highly successful organizations, growth rate of the community, organization similarity, budget, population, cost of labor, and higher education rates. So those are the criteria that the board has established now for the current comparators. I want to pause here and emphasize 1 thing. This moving the authority for the establishment of those comparators from the Board of County Commissioners to the county manager, my professional opinion is an administrative matter. And why I say that is on the briefing sheet, page 2, and I have bolded that to make sure that it's not missed. The Board of County Commissioners retains final sole authority, policy responsibility, for the adoption of the county total compensation philosophy, the establishment of that policy, and the allocation of resources for all funded compensation programs through the annual budget process, including the approval of the pay tables. And I emphasize that to again note that I believe this is an administrative matter to determine what comparables are used. If it gets to the board and you believe that those comparables weren't, you have the authority through the establishment of those pay tables, all compensation, to say, no, we don't agree with this. You need to go back and take another look. So low risk in my opinion, and truly an administrative matter. With that, Chairman, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. O'Hara.
I cannot support transferring any additional power from this board to the county manager. Since 2009, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that with the numbers that I saw, that the staff for the Board of County Commissioners was 25, and for the county manager, it was 12. And now it's 14 for the Board of County Commissioners, and it's 25 for the county manager. We have been transferring power to the county manager, and I think that one of the issues of masking our employees and requiring weekly tests for COVID was an absolute policy issue that should have been reviewed by this board, and we did not. And I know that there is a difference of opinion on this board, but absolutely we cannot be transferring our responsibility. This is a policy-making board. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Hanslick.
Yes, thank you. I'm supportive of this, this motion and this action. While I agree with Commissioner O'Hara that we have to be very thoughtful about what type of policy decisions are given out from the board, this one is not a policy decision. This is choosing those entities for comparative purposes for our salary surveys. And having done that myself in previous life, it's a huge undertaking, and I think it is appropriate that the county manager make that decision, and then, as Mr. Thompson said, we maintain the final decision over that. But for us to meet, or maybe Commissioner O'Hara wants to form a subcommittee to look at those comps, it doesn't seem like it's giving up any authority. We retain the final authority. So thank you.
Yes, I would agree with that statement, that the Board of County Commissioners has the final authority in regards to the item that's before us. So
I have one more question. So when was the last study done?
About 8 years
yeah.
I think
something
it was
like
in
that.
2012. Do you recall, Maury or Joe?
No, I don't, I'm sorry.
I mean, we do test the market in between, but as far as a comprehensive study.
It was about 8 to 10 years ago. Yeah.
The last time, and Joe Waters, Assistant County Manager, I'm going off the top of my head here, but there's the revisit of the peer organizations was about 10 or 12 years ago, but the last time a total compensation assessment was done, I think, was 4 years ago.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clarification, Mr. Thompson, could you elaborate on the relative merits again of the county manager doing the comparators versus the Board of County Commissioners? Since it's only done infrequently, what are the pros and cons of that? And will the commission have any opportunity to understand what criteria are going into the development of the formula before it's in play? Because if it's waits until the last minute with this is all planned out and all this work is done, then it's hard to have much discussion on that issue.
I thought you mentioned the criteria that would be used. Did you not? Could you repeat that?
I did, sir. Those were number of employees, growth rate, organization similarity, budget, population, cost of labor, higher education rates, and proven excellence. However, I want to be clear here, the new proposal in working with our consultant is suggesting that that be pared back a bit. So we would be looking at number of employees, organization similarity, budget, population, and proving excellence. So if you're following along, that would be deleting growth rate, cost of labor, and higher education rates.
And that's, I appreciate that clarification, because one of the issues, and Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Thompson and Ms. Postoke-Ferguson met with all commissioners. I'm not sure. I did have the opportunity to meet with him and with Commissioner Hanslick, I think. And the one question I raised in that meeting, which is not a criteria outlined, is to make sure that that evaluation looks at criteria that are used that focus on performance enhancements, performance improvements, outcome-based remunerations, and organizations that use those kind of mechanisms, those kind of tools to help establish and promote excellence. And I'm not capturing that in either the old criteria or the scaled back. And that is to use performance bonuses or retention bonuses or outcome motivators. Some organizations do that, particularly in the private sector. It's seeping its way in slowly into the public sector. Are we going to leverage those kind of opportunities.
Yes, thank you for that question, Commissioner Ashcraft. So two responses. One, when we talk about the factor of proven excellence, part of it is getting to what you're suggesting. The other piece that I hear you describing, more specific to what are the cutting edge, if you will, compensation practices, that is very much instilled and very much a part of our conversation with our consultant, attempting to capture all of those mechanisms out there in the public and private sector right now.
That's what I would be interested in.
Absolutely, us as well.
Again, this would not be the first time we've had those kind of discussions. So,
And it
Ms.
won't be
Bass?
the last.
Yeah, I guess one of my questions is, let's take our Area Agency on Aging or developmental supports. They're a department of county government. You go to another county, they're a nonprofit pass-through agency. So on these comparables, how do we know, you know what I mean, that, some of our key, mental health, developmental services, aging, these human services that a lot of counties don't do anything. They just say whatever a nonprofit wants to do, that happens. And
Yeah, thank you for that question. An excellent question, because you're exactly right. Many counties don't provide the depth and breadth of human services that Johnson County does. However, if you'd go back to those other factors, when you factor all of those in, that gets to those, again, similar counties that do provide those. So we're only looking at comparables who are truly comparable to what we do.
so you think a lot of these, like City of Tulsa, I know they don't. You know what I mean, KCM. So that will be a directive to them to find counties that incorporate the services that we do.
Correct. And I would add to that, just because we have this list of comparable organizations, part of the study is to go out and look at the complete labor market too. So if you would find that you're not picking up all of those aspects that you feel you need to get a complete picture of the labor market, you would pick that up in other ways.
Okay. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm supportive of this item. In my experience, I've always thought this was an administrative process. Again, bottom line is this commission is not losing anything. We are going to be able to make final discussions and final decisions, and so I'm supportive of this.
Okay. Other comments? Ms. O'Hara.
Yes, thank you. Another concern that I have is that the dynamics of the labor market right now are so fluid that by the time we get this study, it's most likely going to be out of date. I mean, it is a really difficult labor market out there. The private sector is scrambling to try to fill positions. We simply are mirroring what is happening out in the general public. And so I cannot support the expenditure of $150,000, which is coming out of the general fund reserves, which is property taxes, because we had a study 4 years ago, but we can go out, we can spend the $150,000, but by the time we get this, it really is going to be out of date. We were told last night at the airport commission that construction costs, which are reflected in the overall inflation rate, are increasing at 35% a year. And this is just, it's happening so rapidly. And how long is this study going to take? A year?
The consultant has assured us that they would have it done by December this year.
So 8 months.
Everybody's aware of what's going on in the economy and the inflation factors. The Fed took action yesterday in regards to that. And so I think it's important that for us to make sure we know what's going on in the workplace to help us make the best decisions. And so I'm fully supportive of this effort. Ms. Hanslick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that actually this is a very responsible action on the part of the board, because we need to look at our various levels and different positions to find out where are we under market, where are we at market, so that we're not just painting a broad brush or making an assumption about all of our positions in the county. There may be some that need to be market adjusted. There are some that may not need as much adjustment. And we've had this conversation about maybe those that need the greater adjustment should be done sooner, and then maybe the next year adjusting those that aren't as far off of market. But what will happen if we don't do that is we will lose good people because we cannot compete with other cities, but also the open market. So it's critical that we have the data to know where we stand with where we are in the market. And I would say that I don't think it will be out of date in 8 months, because if we have positions that are not at market, they're still not going to be at market by the time we get the report finished.
Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this. You know, I believe that this is going to help the county management in being able to predict. That's why you're using a professional to give us some guidelines. And so I'm in full support. So whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Okay. Well, is Ms. O'Hara?
I think that our directors of our various departments, they are quite aware as to what the competition is. And I know that we've already been told by our district attorney. He has specifically talked about positions and how it's very difficult for him to compete. We've heard from the sheriff. I think that we already have this information in-house.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that anecdotal information is not the kind of action that we need to consider. We all know, again, what's going on. I was talking with another local government organization last week. We're having trouble with employee hiring, and they are having the same issues. So we need to make informed judgments, not those that come across the transom. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to counter Mr. Waters' assertion that it was just 4 years ago. He may be right. COVID has messed up the timeline for a lot of us in a lot of different ways. If it was just 4 years ago, under normal circumstances, I would have reservations, because I would suggest that the data and the approach would have been sufficient enough to move forward. But given COVID, and I think some people call it the great retirement, and the change in workforce expectations, particularly by younger generations, I can see why management, not just in this organization, but nationally, have been updating these plans, and understand that fully, because the impact on labor and their expectations for work related to compensation, because some of the literature has indicated because people can work remotely, there actually has been a lessening of pressure on salary increases. And then for others, because there are a lack of people in the workforce now, have greatly increased it. And those are assumptions that I don't think were even remotely considered 4 years ago. So conceptually, I think this makes a lot of sense. My hesitation is making sure that we have significant and pertinent efforts to look at those, and I think he used the term cutting-edge approaches, because we need a different expectation for remuneration, because younger generations think differently about work, and if we provide them resources and opportunities that aren't of value to them, they will go to other employers, and I respect that. So having said that, I will be supportive of this measure.
Okay. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to this item? If not, it's back before the commission. A motion is in order. Ms. Fast?
Yeah, I will second her motion.
All right, let's have the motion, Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the board approve the use of general fund reserves in the amount not to exceed $150,000 to conduct a comprehensive salary and benefits study, authorize the county manager to execute an agreement for the study, and to approve and adopt resolution number 023-22, amending Johnson County Human Resource Policy 301.
The motion has been made by Allenbrand. Ms. Fast, do you second that
Yes.
motion?
Second.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to authorize the comprehensive salary and benefit study as recommended. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner O'Hara.
No.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Eilert, aye. I have 6 votes in favor, 1 opposed, the motion carried. Are there any other items on the action agenda?
No, sir.
All right, we'll turn to management reports. Ms. Post-Oak Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, I have several items for you this morning. First is the courthouse time capsule. Almost 71 years ago today, a time capsule was installed in the previous courthouse. It was dated May 7th, 1951. It was discovered in a wall cavity near the southeast cornerstone of the building. The time capsule was a copper box, 13 inches by 10.5 by 15. Museum staff worked with Paul Benson, an associate conservator at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, to first x-ray it, then open it. And we have a video to show you the opening and the contents inside, as well as provide information on the next steps for the materials found in the time capsule. So I think Linda's going to play the video.
Okay, let's run the video. I think this is the process and a quick look at what might be there.
Who's got the can opener?
Yeah. Crowbar. Wow.
It was in a cornerstone in the 1951 courthouse. There was indications in newspaper stories written at the time that they had put a time capsule in, but I think until they started taking the building apart, that there really, is when they discovered that, oh yes, there was a time capsule here. We took it to the Nelson Atkins Museum. They have an x-ray machine that just kind of gave us a high-level view of what might be in here, and that's what led Paul to say, okay, we can open this box, but we're going to have to do it with scissors. He had a little crowbar, as opposed to taking a torch to it. Paul Benson, who is a local objects conservator, formerly with the Nelson Atkins, he opened the box for us. There's a program from the Olathe Rodeo. The other program is from the model airplane meet that was held at Olathe Naval Air Station. And inside was an Old Settlers program from 1948. There's an Olathe phone directory from 1950. Facts about long-distance service, station-to-station calls. And then there's the Gardner News from 1951. The Board of County Commissioners owns the collection, but the museum staff, we're the stewards of the collection, so we have a process that we need to follow. So we need to have these items legally, so to speak, transferred over to our stewardship and ownership, and from there, we will work it into our workflow as to when we bring in a conservator. We work with a local paper conservator to kind of come in and look at the contents and say, okay, staff, you can open this stuff on your own. There's nothing complicated here that needs our attention. But for some of these packages, especially the ones that were sealed in wax, I would want that person there. We look to those experts to kind of guide us in how we're going to open up these.
That's very interesting. I was told that there are some envelopes that have first-class stamps on them, 3 cents. And there is a written communication from John Anderson Jr., who was county attorney at that time and went on to become the 36th governor of the state of Kansas. So a lot of interesting items. Maybe it was mentioned, the Olathe phone book, I was told, had 11 or 12 pages. And the other one was the Spring Hill phone book. I'm not sure how many pages it had. So, you know, a lot of interesting historic information that needs to be preserved. And as a add-on, you know, we've had some preliminary discussions about a time capsule for the new courthouse. And I think we need to work on some features that would be included in that type of time capsule also. So, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was probably the best video I've ever seen from staff. I mean, it really meant something. And I was surprised at how pristine the paper documents appeared to be. That maybe we need a copper capsule, Mr. Chairman. I know the plastics are supposed to last 1,000 years, but that was very impressive. So thanks, staff, and who the
Eric
video
Schultz and
presentation.
Gerald Hay.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank Commissioner Ashcraft. You've been bringing this up for the last year, and I appreciate you've been leading on this and championing this issue. This is really important, and I would really, can we have an event at some point when I mean, I think this really needs to be a public event. This is so.
Well, I think the plan is that following additional work on various elements of the exhibit, that there will be an opening for the public to view. Yes.
And staff is working towards that, and as you heard in the video, they've got some work to do before that, and special thanks to museum staff and Paul Benson as well, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good report.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, the City of Overland Park has notified the board that they will be conducting a public hearing on Monday, May 9th. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider the issuance of $51,687,000 in industrial revenue bonds and a 10-year 50% property tax abatement for the portion of the property occupied by Welski Corporation and 25% property tax abatement for the portion of the property not occupied by Welski Corporation. The project is a 188,960 square foot office building located approximately at the southwest corner of College Boulevard and US 69 Highway. The project applicant is College 69 Associates, LLC. The notice of public hearing and cost-benefit report that shows a cost-benefit ratio of 9.43 for Johnson County were attached to the manager's memo. The next item is Feed the Need update. Johnson County's 22 Feed the Need campaign received 1,171 pounds of food donations. The food will be distributed to 7 local food pantries, and wanted to make sure that you're aware that due to the weather forecast, the Feed the Need event originally scheduled for today has been rescheduled for next week over the lunch hour. And final item is another good news item for wastewater. You know that we applied for the WIFIA loan to modernize wastewater infrastructure in Johnson County. We received good news on Tuesday. The U.S. EPA announced $281 million. It's the WIFIA, Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, loan to Johnson County to support the Nelson Wastewater Treatment Plant Improvements Project. And through this WIFIA loan, the EPA is supporting the modernization of critical wastewater infrastructure to be more resilient to climate change while protecting water quality. And the fact that Johnson County will save approximately $80 million as part of this loan process. Construction is expected to be completed in 2029, with construction and operation anticipated to create approximately 1,800 jobs. Full press release is attached. Susan is here. Yet another good news from wastewater. So wanted to share that good news with you since we just received that this week.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when are we going to announce Susan Pekarik Day?
That's when the Disney thing happens.
There were a lot of photos taken yesterday, so.
Very good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
The Wastewater
All right.
Queen Award.
Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question of the county manager back on the City of Overland Park IRB notice of the public hearing. Just want to clarify, there is no action that this board is being asked to take or even can take. It's simply a notification. Just want clarification.
That's our
Yes, it's a
process.
notice of public hearing, and you're right, this board does not have any authority. It's put here to help get the word out.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do we have an interest rate on the WIFIA?
Yes, I'll ask Susan to come forward and share that with you.
Susan Picaric with Wastewater. The interest rate was 3.01%, so we were able to get that done before the rates were hiked yesterday, a half a point, so.
Okay.
3.01.
3.01?
01. Mhm.
All right. And what's that in comparison to the bonds on Tomahawk? Is this about the same, or, I mean, you don't have to be specific.
I don't recall what the interest rates were on the Tomahawk project right now, but I can
Tomahawk
certainly get
facility
that for
was
you. We sold those a
financed
few
several years ago when the
Right.
rates were much lower. So,
Yeah.
again, I don't recall, but we did have bond issues that were below 2%, as I recall.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I thought, that this is a significant increase from what we have been used to paying. And then on the notification of the economic redevelopment, or economic development revenue bonds, because Overland Park doesn't like industrial revenue bonds. They like to use economic, they usually use economic. Anyway, I'm glad to see that it's 50%. I would prefer that they stop subsidizing these types of development, but because our folks in Johnson County are really reeling from the increase in property taxes, and to shelter the corporations is really difficult for me to understand why we continue it. But this is a 50%, which is much better than what is down in Edgerton on the big warehouses, which is approximately 90%. They only pay 10% of their property taxes, and part of that goes back to their infrastructure. So we have some real issues in Johnson County as far as corporate welfare. And I just hope that we can get the state legislature to act on this.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hanslick and Ms. O'Hara raised an interesting question. Do we have any information as to why Welski Corporation property got 50% and non-Welski Corporation property only got 25%? Was there something that I missed in terms of why?
I think it's called negotiation.
So Welski's corporate influence got them an additional 25%? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not suggesting it at all. I'm suggesting there's always negotiation that occurs in these kind of activities. All right, next item.
Oh, Mr. Chairman. And that's it for my report, Chairman. Next is the legislative update.
Ms. Hanslick.
Yes, I just wanted to, before we leave that issue, to reiterate that the county commission does not have any authority over what the cities do in terms of tax incentives, other than that we can vote to negate a creation of a taxing district. But other than that, we don't have any authority over their decisions, nor do we have any authority over their decisions of building multifamily and apartment facilities.
I would also say this, that would have to be a commission decision. There is no commissioner, including the chair, has the ability to veto anything on their own motion. So it has to be
Mr. Chairman?
a commission decision. Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you. Yes, on tax increment finance districts, we currently in Johnson County have $2.8 billion of real estate that's sheltered under that program. And the board does have veto authority over the creation of those districts, and we have never vetoed one. And on industrial revenue bonds, we have $1.1 billion of real estate under those, which transfers $52 million a year in property taxes from public coffers to private developers. So this is an issue. I mean, it's an issue that needs to be discussed, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
I think those discussions have been going on for some time, and usually only one side is presented. There is no presentation of what the economic benefits have been totally. And I think we heard last night at the Airport Commission meeting that the activities that have occurred at the airport with abatements have generated $1.2 billion in economic activities for Johnson County. So, Ms. O'Hara?
Thank you. So the underlying assumption is on economic development is that if we give these tax incentives, that it will broaden the tax base, and then the property taxes for the existing businesses and residential areas, that the residents of the county will have benefited from that. And unfortunately, that has never occurred, and there's a legislative study, I believe it was 4 years ago, that indicated that these companies that are given these types of abatements, that they would have located here anyway. We're a great place to do business. All of the warehouse development is because of the intermodal. This is geographically driven, and these cost-benefit studies, they have not come to fruition. Our property taxes have not gone down. They continue to go up. And a reminder, Spring Hill, that the property taxes on residents averaged an increase of 20%. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, you have a report.
I do. Thank you, Chairman. You have your legislative report in your information for today's meeting. I would characterize it as a summary of the legislative action through a now second adjournment of the legislature, which occurred in the early morning hours of last Friday, April 29th. I believe the Senate finally adjourned shortly after 2 a.m. That Friday morning. They will return for a sine die on Monday, May 23rd. I'm just going to touch on a few items of particular note to us as county government in the report. Lots of information today. On page 2 are bills of note that have passed both chambers, starting with House Bill 2510, which was the omnibus budget bill. Some good news there. Looking at the Department of Health and Environment, $10 million of state general funds was added to fund the 988 hotline operations. I will comment more on that because there's still outstanding work to be done on that issue later in the session. $35.6 million, including $34.6 million from federal ARPA funds, were added for housing and other economic development projects. $4 million, I've reported on this previously, was added to the Department of Corrections, excuse me, I'm getting my lines mixed up, $4 million of SGF to provide a 5% salary adjustment to certain employees was added. Then $841,000 and some change was added to local community corrections agencies, which would also provide a 5% salary increase for community corrections officers. I will note that developmental supports will also be the recipient of some additional state funds, probably federal pass-through funds intended for direct support workforce wages as well, so some aid there. That budget bill, if you followed along, passed with pretty overwhelming margins, 33-7 in the Senate and 95-22 in the House. Capers, we have a transfer of $1.125 billion from the SGF to Capers to help shore up that trust fund. Find that on page 3. Page 5, I'll note because of our extensive engagement in health and human services work and engagement with managed care organizations who oversee the Medicaid program in Kansas. If you've been following that debate, the governor's authority to issue new contracts was limited, so those contracts appear to be extended now through 2024. Page 6, couple of local government election issues there I would call to your attention. We previously talked about House Concurrent Resolution 5022, which is the constitutional amendment requiring that a sheriff be elected in each county. Again, draw your attention to that item on page 6 because the explanatory statement, which will be placed on the ballot, is included there. So you can see fairly lengthy 3 paragraphs that will be on the ballot. That's there for your review. Then we go into some election bill, two bills there. One limiting executive authority related to elections, really limiting the governor's ability to negotiate some consent decrees and other agreements with outside entities. And then Senate substitute for House Bill 2138, you'll find starting on page 7, is the Comprehensive Election Reform Bill. I've been asked several questions about that. That lays out all of the provisions in that comprehensive bill, and over onto page 8. Beginning on page 9, there's some information about housing issues and some legislation dealing with that, a couple of different items for your review. And anything else I had highlighted? Yes, over on page 14, there are bills of note that have not passed both chambers, which are expected likely to be addressed during the second veto session. And one back to that 988 suicide hotline. Even though funds were appropriated for that, there's still some policy work that needs to be sorted out on that issue. I believe likely to get that accomplished. And then finally, on page 17, have a list of the governor's vetoes and the ones that were sustained. I would note at the bottom of page 17, the bill, Senate Bill 493, prohibiting cities and counties from regulating plastic and other containers. Governor did veto that bill. The House determined not to reconsider that veto, so that veto was sustained. And with that, Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions? Ms. Fast.
Yeah, if you could ask our lobbyists a little bit more on the tax credit. I mean, I know DeSoto qualifies for rural housing, USDA rural housing. There's a little part of Gardner that does. But when I read it, it seems like all these funds are targeted to rural Kansas and that we don't qualify, and that really concerns me. But I know it's too late on that.
Well, thank you for that question, Commissioner Fast. That was my understanding as well. But in just reviewing this again this morning, again on page 9, House Bill 2237, the header there calls out rural housing. You read down into that first bullet, it also references urban areas. So there may be some opportunities there. So yes, I need to look more into that one.
Okay, thank you.
And has Tim talked with our senators? I mean, this 988 doesn't get approved. This is an embarrassment. We'll be one of the only states in the nation. And for us to continue, we have the pilot project. We can't continue that pilot project unless funding comes for the 988.
Yeah, my understanding of that, and back to my earlier comment, fairly high degree of certainty that the legislature will get that issue addressed when they reconvene. Again, the money has now been appropriated. So we know that started out as a conversation about a surcharge to telephone bills. That failed, so now it's a use of general fund reserves for at least the first year of implementation. I believe that we'll probably resume that conversation at some point about the surcharge being the ongoing funding mechanism. And then to the policy issues, from what I understand, we're pretty close, and there is a shared interest in making sure that we get that done so that we can implement on July 1.
I just can see what happens, always does with the state. We implemented 10 million of general refers, in 10 million. Counties set up the infrastructure, or nonprofits, where it's only 2 county mental health in the state.
Right.
And so then our county taxpayers, once again, have to fund it because the state pulls out. And so I don't know how we can keep advocating for that surcharge. That's the only way to keep it sustainable.
Okay, Ms. O'Hara.
Yes, thank you. So we are transferring $1.125 billion from the general fund to CAPERS.
Correct.
And when I served in the House in 2011 and 2012, we were looking at the same issues. So I would encourage the state legislature to try to come up with a plan that actually will work, because this continual input of additional money from the state fund, it just adds the burden to the rest of the taxpayers in the state. So I would just encourage the state to look at possibly some sort of 401k type plan instead of the guaranteed, the guaranteed payments that we have now, that it's just, it's antiquated and it needs to be redone. And we had a chance to do it 10 years ago and we didn't take it, so.
Just a reminder on that issue, we now have Capers 1, 2, and 3 in Kansas. Capers 3 is a 401 type plan. So as folks age out of the system, you will see that transition occur.
So we are going towards that
Correct.
transition. Good, thank you.
Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up to what Commissioner Fass was talking about in terms of housing and let people know that there are a number of webinars coming up through the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation regarding the Kansas Homeowner Assistance Fund that will help people with paying not only mortgage payments, but also property taxes. The Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance Program is still available, and there are some other webinars and presentations on various programs that are available through the KHRC.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Are there any other reports?
No, sir.
All right. We'll turn to commission comments. Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that that has been made quite clear by the residents in southern Johnson County that they are very concerned about the truck traffic that is coming out of the intermodal and inappropriately using our secondary streets and roads, and that we need to be aggressive in addressing this issue and not put the burden on the backs of the taxpayers, which if we improve these roads and we don't limit the truck traffic, it's going to be a tremendous impact on that area. And I have had several people contact me about that. The other thing that I am concerned about, I know that Roland Park has passed an ordinance indicating that they have directed the police department not to cooperate fully with ICE. And I would just really, I would suggest that we look at this and put an item and add it to a future agenda to review our policy and administrative procedures for the County Assistant Road System Fund set up by this board in 2005 to address eligibility for cities eligibility for cities for such funds to ensure that cities are complying with Kansas Executive Order on sanctuary cities as well as other state and federal laws. So I just think that it's a point of discussion because it appears that Roland Park is not in compliance, and I just would like us to have the discussion.
Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I was able to attend a couple of great events, one that's been talked about quite a bit today, the Tomahawk Wastewater ribbon cutting, just a great event. And also last night, the commission had a joint meeting with the Airport Commission that was very well done and really gave a lot of insight of what's going on with our airports and New Century.
Thank you. Ms. Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to mention that last week I had the very great honor of presenting one of the Mid-America Regional Council's Regional Leadership Awards to Dr. Stephen Stites from the University of Kansas Health Center for his leadership during the pandemic. And for those of you who may have been watching for the last 2 years, KU has presented a morning medical update to keep people apprised of what was happening in terms of the pandemic. And in fact, I'm sure there'll be more information about this later, but our chairman is also one of the recipients of a Regional Leadership Award, and we'll be celebrating all of our winners at the Regional Assembly on Friday, June 10th there'll be a luncheon, and look forward to more information about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was told that I could not say anything publicly about that, so now that Commissioner Hanslick has,
It's out there.
The
congratulations.
letter came out.
The cork is out of the bottle. Very good. A few things, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to remind us that in the last few years, and I know COVID has kind of modified our mental timeline, but we have had a couple of sessions in which we talked about TIFs and other financing mechanisms, and each of those sessions, I think, heavily presented the pros to those mechanisms. And I understand that, but I continue to be an advocate for Johnson County and the impact that those mechanisms have, particularly TIFs, on our services and our revenue. So I understand Commissioner O'Hara's concern, and I suspect it will be a conversation that we will continue. Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to echo what Mr. Myers said about the event last night. The Airport Commission and Airport Services is one that many people, unless you're a pilot or have economic development interests out there, just don't realize what they do, and they have come a long way in the last few years. So, Mr. Otto, if you're watching, very good. The members of that board, very good. It's a class operation, and so very good. I appreciate Mr. Myers raising that. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, on a little bit of a lighter side, no one's mentioned it yet, but it is Cinco de Mayo, and that recognizes back, I think it was 1860 something, 1862, where Mexico got its victory over the French Empire to begin their independence. So today, I think we're all celebrating our Mexican heritage, and I'm sure Mr. Myers will imbibe with a little Mexican taco and beverage.
Thank you. Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the Kansas Heritage Museum event, a fundraiser for the small museums, and the chairman had a presentation there, and there was quite some interesting facts. Also, I too attended the Nelson ribbon cutting, and that was a lot of fun, and I still say that Tomahawk.
I'm like, yes, Nelson.
I did this last
Not yet,
Tuesday.
not
I
yet.
think I need to go take a retreat somewhere. I attended it, and it was very well done, and I think that there will be a wastewater Disney in Johnson County. I believe it, because I think it's so progressive in what you're doing. Also, I'm proud to be the liaison on the airport board, and I want to thank Aaron and the commission for all the hard work, and it's great to see that dirt moving. So, and then also this evening, there is a Johnson County Park museum at the Johnson County Museum. It's an art show. So if you don't have anything on your calendar tonight, why, we can do something every night, right?
Thank you, Ms. Fast.
Yes, I was just very proud of my cities last Thursday at the Northeast Chamber event. I want to highlight City of Mission has 78% of their law enforcement officers that have gone through our CIT, crisis intervention training, and they're working on 100%, but they've gotten some new officers, so they will be making 100% in the next year. Just incredible work. I had a tour with my Jackson County colleagues of the Children's Mercy Research Center. Just amazing work Children's Mercy does, and they're life-flighting children from Johnson County. Yesterday went Westwood in my district has KU Cancer Center. We're the only NCI designated cancer center in the state. They are expanding, recruiting some of the top-notch cancer specialists. And it was really just wonderful to hear from them. So many of these cancer professionals live in Northeast Johnson County, and I know you know a lot about their cancer center. And one interesting fact is those who go through KU Medical Center's cancer center have 30% better outcomes because they are that NCI designated certified research center. So those are kind of the interesting events that I've been at.
Okay, thank you. Well, at Commissioner Ashcraft's suggestion, I will try to raise a glass. Following today's activities. There will be a 1 p.m. Committee of the Whole meeting. We will have two items, one about the county square and also Johnson County Wastewater. So with that, there is no request for an executive session. We are adjourned. We'll take about a 5-minute break and come back for agenda review. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.